Each and every week, and this thing started as a quasi-sports segment. Bill Cole has been my friend for a long time and has been running around on rooftops, and we have had beverages together in Indianapolis on more than one occasion, which makes us old Colts fans as well. He, of course, runs Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy, and much like myself trying to fix the world, each and every week we get together, and he performs some sort of Dr. Melfiak. Did you go to school for psychiatry, psychology,
No,
psychosis?
That's one I didn't do so well in.
Man, things have changed, right? From where we are just with the mayor. And the last week and a half, I have had an influential person in the media business, come up to me at an event for the Maryland Lottery where they never spend money with me and said to me, I'm hearing that the Orioles might be leaving Baltimore. What are you hearing? And I said to myself, this isn't me starting the rumor, right? This isn't some out-of-town Nashville, Portland, Montreal, saying, hey, Angelo says boots on the ground here to move the team. I don't think that's the case at all. I know one thing they don't have, though, and this is something that should be concerning to everyone in the region. They've had no conversation with the Maryland Stadium Authority about moving their lease forward. We're 2.5 years away, literally 2.5 seasons away. That's 2 seasons if you're not counting this one, and who is counting this one anyway. This should be of grave concern to people that they're like, yeah, it was a long-term lease 27.5 years ago. And all of a sudden, April 6th, 1992, correct? That's when the stadium opened. That starts to feel like October of 2021 feels pretty close when it's like April of 19 or now almost May of 19, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any experience negotiating long-term leases with stadiums, but I'm kind of thinking this is not something that they just send you the new one in the mail and you just kind of pull it out, read it, and sign it, and it's a 30-day kind of thing. My guess is there's a couple more conversations that go on around that. So if 2 years, if they're not already talking about it, that would be concerning.
Well,
talk about.
Yeah, it should be concerning, right? I mean,
right.
All of it's concerning. Not selling out opening day and forcing Rock Kabako to lie about it. Having no one in the stadium the second series, having very few people in the stadium when the Yankees they couldn't sell out opening day on a 70-degree day against the Yankees.
Yeah. I guess when it comes to the ownership concerns, I don't have my ear to the ground and have a whole bunch of rumor stuff, but I guess where I go to it is, okay, so let's say that Baltimore Pride comes out and there's an ownership group who's local and wants to go inquire and potentially take a position for
the lack of let's put some names to this. Let's say it's Kevin Plank, Cal Ripken, Bill Miller, and I don't know, name somebody else. Bisciotti as a minority. I'm making that up, but okay, fair enough. Bisciotti isn't even in love with his football team right now, which I'll get to later in the conversation. But yeah, okay. So there's always been a position that these kids aren't going to sell the team. And there's always been a position that they're going to beat up the Nationals and they're not going to move, and they're now 12.5 years in on that project. And all of this is happening, Bill, while the team on the field is horrific, while the community sentiment is horrific, while the business community is horrific, while the political atmosphere here is horrific. And, there's a lot of things happening here with gray clouds that would make it very easy for them to shuffle out of here 3 years from now, off to Nashville or Portland or wherever they want to go, where they can make more money and, more importantly, be loved. They can be loved elsewhere. Here, we're just spoiled and, we're lucky to have them and lucky that the Yankees and the Red Sox show up here 3 times a year. There's been an arrogance about this.
Let me spin you a little bit of a different story, right? So I don't disagree with any of the actual baseball-related statements you made. What I would offer is, so logically, if I think about this other group, looking to buy that team, it's like there's probably a whole lot of other things that we would suggest you buy instead of that would stand to do better into the future. So more than likely...
Well, there is some evidence that baseball's a dying sport. More than a little evidence,
and even
right?
beyond that, like even if there's probably another baseball team that is possibly available that would be in better circumstances than this team.
Than one that's pinched in with an awful media deal, with a broken brand, with a decent brand 38 miles away, with Bryce Harper 80 miles. You mean that, right? You mean
right.
We're now what the Baltimore Colts represented, which is can't have two teams in the Bay Area. We're now Oakland.
Right. So here's the spin. The spin is, okay, anybody smart like that is looking to buy low and sell high, right? So maybe it makes them more attractive because there's some, fundamental reasons why it would be cheaper than it would be otherwise. In the arena of dollars we're talking about, that's probably not even a real thing, but maybe it is.
Well, we're going at $1 billion, $5 billion, right? That's what we're looking at, right?
Yeah. The second thing is the fundamental business community of Baltimore is a really good one. So if you look at, the Hopkins and all the research and all the doctors, and you look at all the STEM jobs, and you look at what Port Covington's trying to do, and you look at the cybersecurity stuff, and if you look at
Northrop Grumman, you look at McCormick, right? You look at okay. I mean, I'll hear all of that. The port, right?
Despite bad PR, right, and the ick that consists of all the messaging about our town in the larger national story, fundamentally around here, things are actually pretty good, and it still represents a whole bunch of opportunity because of the goofy stuff that goes on almost, every other month or every other week at this pace, right? So I think there's a real opportunity, not to mention that, say what you want about the Angelos and the Orioles, but Camden Yards is like a good investment. It's a good property. It's a good thing to be able to play in. It still draws. I think they kind of maybe haven't updated it as much, and there's probably some work to do there.
Well, that's what Marty talked a lot about. And by the way, Bill Cole here, just if anybody's jumping in, Cole Roofing, my Dr. Melfi, I just want to throw one other concept at you that's a very, very important concept that you haven't brought up yet that Marty always brings up first, right? And it's the first thing anybody smart, I bring up Marty, it'd be the first thing John Moog would. Anybody smart in this space, this is what they talk about. And I know you travel a little bit. Have you been to a ball game anywhere in the last 5 years in some other places? Like, have you seen that they're building a new place in Arlington, Texas? Have you seen, let's say, San Diego, where it's built in the middle of a Soho neighborhood, or what has gone on the north side of Chicago now, where Wrigley Field used to be in a neighborhood? Now they own the neighborhood, and they are in charge of gentrifying the neighborhood, as well as Atlanta, where they have just literally left the keys to Turner Field at the city's gate and went out to the county and cut a deal with the Johnny O up there and put a facility into Owings Mills Town Center that the Braves own the bank around it and own the condos and the bar across the street and the brew pub and everything else. There's a lot there, but that's what the Angelos boys would get if they go to Nashville, right? If they go to Portland, they get to own a neighborhood, and they get to be beloved. And Phil Knight comes up and rubs elbows with them in Portland, or Carrie Underwood and Garth Brooks, get to hang out, and they get to wear their country boots, and John gets to show the bottoms of his soles of his boots off in the Orange Lounge when they rebrand the Orioles, the Midwestern Birds of the Nashville, whatever, River Basin. Dude, there's a lot of money out there someplace where they could be loved, and someplace where they would be supported, and someplace where maybe they want to roll their sleeves up and go out and meet people like you and me. You know what I mean? You own a business here. I own a business here.
But, if I think about Nashville, my statement would be, hey, be careful that you're not buying into something that's already, fairly high on the appreciation level. Right, so Nashville's on fire. I agree.
By the way, if the Orioles were listed as $1.2 billion in 2017, okay, so I would think that if this mythical person comes along and says, here's $1.5 billion, John, go away, that John would say, I'm not going anywhere. And Lou would say, our families, we own the Orioles, we're not moving. We're still making money off of this. Yes, we're in last place. Yes, our partners hate us. Yes, the city hates us. Yes, the city's in turmoil. But at any point, I can move this team to Nashville, get a better deal there, own a neighborhood there, and my franchise will be worth $2 billion. I can do that by blinking and signing the deal on October the 1st of 2021. I can have that paperwork sitting there. Now, Baltimore, what can you do for me? Maryland, what can you do for me? Governor Hogan, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah, I don't know that if you really get down into the details.
But that is the way this works, right? I mean, literally.
Yeah. I'm with you.
That's how this works.
I agree with the line of thinking, sure. I just think the other towns that would be recruiting are saying that because they've fixed some other kind of, fundamental blight and issue that they had, and now they want a baseball team. And it's like, okay, but I don't know.
Well, that's literally about having the right politicians and the right amount of money and the right spin on it. It would not be hard to spin Nashville right now into a baseball town where the Predators have worked, the Titans have worked, the Country Music Hall of Fame has worked, the Image has worked. If anybody hasn't been to Nashville in a while, it's a little bit like Manhattan all of a sudden, and it's happening very, very rapidly, like the way it happened in Vancouver, the way it's happening in Pittsburgh, if you've been to Pittsburgh lately, to see the kind of building that's going on there. And that's why I'm standing up with Baltimore Positive and saying, hey, 10 years from now, Baltimore needs to be that, with or without the Orioles, with or without the Ravens, with or without anything, because we have a port, we have 95, we have mountains, we have oceans, we have Johns Hopkins, we have all of these assets, but the baseball team used to be like sort of this bellwether, this thing that drew everybody here 30 years ago. I don't know that it's that for our community, and I don't know that it's ever going to be that again. It's going to have to change a lot for that to be the case, and I think 2.5 years from now, when it comes time for our community to give the Angelos family whatever it wants, it's going to be a very, very difficult sell around here, I think.
Yeah, I think that we've learned our lesson where large municipal projects funded by tax dollars to build stadiums and create, urban renewal hasn't really gone the way we'd hoped. And there's a number of cities that can vouch for that. The city that you were talking, like, if you look at Nashville, they built an amazing convention center. Like, it is one of the most beautiful buildings that I've ever been in, and it's massive. And now all of a sudden,
because they're competing with Vegas, because they're competing, they're competing with Miami.
The roofing convention goes to Nashville. Like, the roofing convention is a big show. It usually is Las Vegas, Orlando, and then New Orleans, and that's that's just the circuit. And now all of a sudden, we were in Nashville this year, and I was, wow, okay, haven't been here since Ray Lewis took the ball from Eddie George, and we went,
That was only a couple of years ago, 20 years ago, that's all.
Right. So it was a little bit different than when I was there that long ago. And it is on fire, and maybe there's a neighborhood that they could give a baseball team. But I think what's interesting and what's positive about the universe is the sports teams aren't the ones leading the revival, because that didn't work. What you're seeing is other ways that cities are figuring out how to do this. And then, hey, maybe the bolt-on is the baseball team. And in that scenario, it sort of devalues the sports team, except that, like you said, Portland and Nashville, there's 4 or 5 that all want one. So then the value goes back up again.
Well, one summer night, I want you to go out to St. Louis. And I'm
going to go to St. Louis.
By the way, I'm not bagging on St. Louis, okay? I mean, I grew up with an incredible fascination with the Gateway Arch, and anybody that knows me, that has known me from that period of my life, like, St. Louis was a special place for me. I went with my parents. I have these great pictures. I saw Ric Flair and Harley Race wrestle there, and, Pete Rose run it out, and Schmitty run it out, and like all of that stuff. So I have an affinity for St. Louis, but St. Louis is a falling apart place. Like, I'm a guy that goes a lot of places. Buffalo, which, by the way, when the Ravens schedule comes out, Buffalo's the trip I want to do. I want to try to put Toronto Toronto and Niagara Falls in somehow? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm when it comes out, everybody email me, nasty@wnsd.net. You'll see it out on Facebook and Twitter. But I'm hoping to do something cool with Buffalo. And Buffalo's like a place where they don't even have a disco, dude. You know what I mean? Like, they're...
Hope it's September.
Dude, Buffalo's rough, and St. Louis is rough, and they had, up until 2 years ago, NFL teams, the same way Green Bay did, and like all that. So about sports teams and size and market and TV, the leagues make so much money off of the existence that the Jacksonville Jaguars can still exist when they probably should be in London, right? From a financial standpoint, or you know, or Mexico City, or wherever the next big pile of money is. But I guess that's my point. They're all going to be reaching for the next huge pile of money the next time around. And everybody I talk to, I mean, baseball's playing games in London and Sydney, Australia, because they're trying to grow their footprint. The NFL obviously has been doing this, and you know, we saw that with our feet and our knees in London a couple of years ago. But my graver concern about all of this is, where's the conversation, man? You know what I mean? Why am I the only guy you're going to hear this from, you know, over the next 2.5 years? Because this is troublesome in a lot of ways, that the baseball team, that no one's supporting them, and that the notion that Nashville would see it as a way to get 2.9 million people down to their riverfront, right? You know, on summer nights, you know, on off nights, what the restaurants would think of that. That would be a big sell down there, and I don't think it would be a hard sell. In the same way it wasn't a hard sell here when the Mayflowers were headed out to I-70, and Governor Schaefer, Mayor Schaefer, had tears in his eyes and said, we're not going to let the Orioles leave. And I had Marty Conway and Larry Lucchino and, you know, Charles Steinberg, the people with the blood on the bricks, Janet Marie Smith, sit here and tell me about what it took to keep that baseball team here, what it took to keep that baseball team out of D.C., what it took to get the stadium built downtown with a warehouse when Stedman wanted it in Port Covington. And quite frankly, most of the people in Annapolis wanted it in Columbia or in Laurel, right? Or at least in Elkridge, you know, someplace that wasn't called Baltimore City. And now 30 years later, we're trying to figure this out, right? And I'm trying to figure it out. And whoever's going to run for mayor is going to have to try to figure it out, because the baseball team's in peril here for a lot of reasons in a lot of ways. And I'm not responsible for it. I've just been a mirror and held up the mirror to the Angelos family and to the community and said, what are you doing? We're 15 years into having a baseball team in Washington. They're not going away. All of a sudden, we are Oakland. We are Oakland without a BART, quite frankly. We're Oakland with, I wish I could curse, with a crappy train system is what we are.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that, see, our generation and the older generation measure the, you know, the scale or the importance of a city by their professional sports teams.
Pride,
right?
be more
like
pride,
you weren't
baby.
You weren't a real city if they didn't have a football team or a baseball team. They, you know, they're
Richmond,
they're kind of like,
Harrisburg. These aren't even like real places, right?
Right,
Columbus. Remember when
had.
Columbus was just that place in the middle of Ohio, and everybody'd say, well, Columbus has more people than Cleveland and Cincinnati. Well, you know, now the Blue Jackets are, you know, they own the town. Ohio State, these big places like Birmingham that don't have anything, but they have Alabama. You know what I mean? They're better than the Blue Jackets or the Predators or the Orioles. They have Alabama and they have Auburn. You know, and that doesn't take a day off either.
Right, but my question leads me to the next generation and how they measure cities. And based on their lack of participation in the professional sports ticket buying world, that I believe is still true. Like the data says that, you know, that's just not what they're buying, or they are, but there's so many things to buy.
Well, there's no 25-year-old that takes the Orioles as seriously as you and I did when we were 25, right? Like life or death, kick my dog, jump out the balcony. I can't believe that Zach Britton said. I mean, whatever outrage you would have in sports. My son's 34, and everybody his age and younger measures the place they live by whether someone's not going to hold a gun up to their head, and whether they have a park they can go hang out in, and whether they can, you know, have access to beer and weed and, you know, stuff like that, you know?
And I think that's a really interesting question, is how does the millennial generation measure cities in that idea of not size so much, because you weren't looking at cities as like, oh, it must be a big city because as a team, it was just more about substance, right? Like you were not a substantial city if you didn't have a professional sports team. And I don't think that's how they measure. Maybe it's where they rank on the foodie list, right? Or to your point, right? How many dog parks can I take my dogs? I don't.
How many
know
gastropubs do we have? Do we have
right.
a skate park? You know what I mean? Is there? I don't know.
Do they have scooters or not? You know, do they have squeegee boys or not?
Fair enough.
Those are the questions, I think. And
they don't have Amici's meatballs. I'll tell you that. They don't get that in Charlotte.
Well, and where does history and where does that lay? Do they want to be places that are rich with history, and is it celebrated, or is that just like insignificant and not important? And these are questions that Baltimore City and the next mayor need to ask to figure out how we're going to talk about our city, because we can't keep talking about it the way we talk about it. We got to stop complaining, and we need to just we're not putting our head in the sand, right? Like we're going to clean up our backyard. But at the same time, we need to be talking about the positive, good things that go on here,
and what is
important. Know that.
And what is important? You know what is important? We're going to have to answer this Orioles question, right? My audience, 30 years of doing this, I've dedicated my life to chasing a baseball team that doesn't want me talking about them, doesn't want me to come. Literally, I've dedicated my life to a baseball team that has flown me 2 giant middle fingers, and pretty much most of the community here, most of the business community would say that, over the course of time. And now, over the next 3 years, we're going to have to ask the question as to whether we want the baseball team or not. Like, literally, that's a real question. Like, what grass would grow up through the cracks of Camden Yards if the baseball team left here? And don't think for a second that the Angelos family's not going to hold the gun to the head to the next mayor, the governor, the next city, because nobody's answering calls from what I understand. You know what I mean? Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, Bill Cole. By the way, Bill Cole is here, Cole Roofing. Can I give you a plug? Can I tell everybody how you've been in business 100 years and how you've been doing this?
But finish your thought, because it sounds like it was going to be a good one, and then we'll do that.
No, I want to plug Cole. Tell everybody about Gordy, and then I'll do it.
Sure.
I want to get the plug in.
Cole Roofing is a commercial.
You are my
contractor.
sponsor.
Yeah, been in Baltimore for 100 years. Anything from a leak to roof replacements to just the roof evaluations, right? You're not sure what condition it is, call us. We'll send a guy out. We'll take a look at it, and we'll let you know how to extend the life. And then Gordian Energy Systems is
solar.
turnkey,
James Bond.
Right, turnkey renewable energy design build firm. So holding owners' hands from the beginning through feasibility all the way to construction and commissioning, and then taking care of solar arrays and other renewable energy stuff for the life of its productive time. And that's on roofs, which made a lot of sense to us. And then as time's gone on, it turned into parking canopies and solar farms and all kinds of good stuff. And we really enjoy that, and we think there's a lot of benefit to our community when we do that.
By the way, I want you to take me to the solar farm. My friends at Curio have offered to take me to Bill, this is a thing I want to say on last shot, sort of shot to take home with you for the week. And the Orioles, by the way, play a little game, okay? Who runs the Ravens? Who's the president of the Ravens? Everyone in Baltimore knows. Dick Cass, correct. Who is that person for the Orioles?
Yeah, I have no idea.
There's a guy named John Vitelin that they brought in last year. You probably saw it on your Baltimore Business Journal feed or whatever. I called it Vitelin. I didn't know how to pronounce it because I guess it's like Ritalin. I was sort of rhyming. Vitelin is how it's pronounced. Apparently very nice man from Canada, hockey guy, worked for the San Francisco 49ers, worked in Miami for the Heat. He was brought in late last summer to be the COO of the Orioles, the Joe Foss, or whatever that title would be in the modern era, to run the team, to be the front business-wise of the team. I got some word that he might be going back to Miami late last week, and I've still never met him. I wrote him a really lengthy letter that is still pinned on the front of my Twitter, quite frankly, because I thought it was the most important letter I wrote last year, which is whoever is going to run the team, here's what you're up against with me. Here's how I've been treated, in 6 pages, as a guy who's tried to do nothing but sell your team, the sport, the history, the importance, the significance, the pride, the local, the white paneled bird, the Baltimore on the road jerseys. I sold all of those things before they actually did them. I am their marketing conscience, you know.
Sure.
I was the one that said, bring back the white paneled hats. They brought them back. Everybody loved them. I was the one that said, let's take Wild Bill to the ballpark. We'll sell 2,000 tickets, and you get to keep all the money and screw me 3 years later on business. And we did that back in 2002 and 3 and 4. So I've been down the mountain with all this, but I wrote John Vitelin a Welcome to Birdland letter, and John Vitelin now, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, has decided this isn't a good thing. And it's fascinating to me. You've owned a roofing company in this community for 100 years. You love baseball. Here's the guy that runs the Orioles, and you don't even know his name. You never met him. I never saw him at a Baltimore Business Journal event. I never saw him at any CEO events. I didn't see him around town. I don't even see Marco Gentile around town, except when he's hiding from me sometimes at an Accelerant event. But I for the Orioles, all of this is quiet. This used to be front page news, right? If Larry Lucchino gave the keys to Edward Bennett Williams in 1990 and said, I want no part of this, or to Eli Jacobs in 91 or 92, I want no part of this, it would have been front page story. It would have been the front page story, Lucchino bolts Orioles to run Padres or whatever, right?
Sure.
Like, how can this not be a story? How can the Orioles business, the business of the Orioles, not be of a bigger concern to us as a community, given our investment in this baseball team?
This is an oversimplification of the answer, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's not good enough clickbait. So no one clicks on that story.
They didn't even click on Adam Jones, for crying out loud, right?
Right. No one clicks on Oriole stories. So
unless Chris Davis is over 54,
no one's investing any energy to write them.
I guess. I mean, the Masson story last week, the Masson story is its own book. You know what I mean? Like, I've written the Pewter Principles, and this story keeps going on, and I'm telling you what, dude, if the story ends with Mayflower vans loading up the Orioles and taking them somewhere while no one here even cares, you know what I mean? Like, does anyone care? I mean, I guess that's what I'm asking right now. Not enough to come downtown if you live in Bel Air, right? Like, not enough to buy a 13-game plan. I mean, I don't care.
Right.
I mean, I care a lot, but I care enough that I have quit on these people. I can't support these people because of the things they've done to me, my friends, and people I've witnessed, and the disregard for the community in general. As the city's burning down, they're playing a baseball game while tanks are circling the building, and the arrogance of that, you know, and the puffery of it as though they'd done a good thing. I mean, Kevin Cowherd and I went back 38 minutes, or you can go listen to that in the buyatoyota.com audio vault, about the buffoonery of playing a baseball game for no one, and then wondering 4 years later why no one comes.
Yeah, and I wasn't old enough to remember the feeling for the Colts before they left, but my guess is, you know, everyone was frustrated, and, you know, maybe the attendance wasn't that good, and maybe everybody was complaining, and then as soon as you take it away, they're like, oh my gosh, don't do that. I can't believe that just happened. And that's probably the same thing that would happen with the Orioles.
By the way, when the Oilers left Houston, there were 60 people holding candles. You know what I mean? Like, when the Vancouver Grizzlies left, I mean, name any of these franchises. When the Oakland A's finally leave, and they will, maybe they're the last ones on the boat. I don't know, right? But when these teams leave, it's not 1984 anymore. And I'm not going to sit here after all our city's been through and play all Pollyanna, you know, play all Brett Hollander or all, you know, Ed Norris. What would he know about losing the Colts? What would any of those people know? I mean, I built my whole life around sports here. It's disgusting to me. You know, it really is. It's disgusting to me that I have a PSL on my desk here that I'm not even renewing because I don't need 4 tickets. I have 2. My son doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to spend $1,444 on season tickets, 2 of the games that are in August that nobody cares about, right? I I'm concerned, and everybody should be concerned, and everybody should be a little pissed off, and everybody should be thinking about rolling their sleeves up to say, what can I do to make the city better? I don't want to go all Kennedy on you, but, ask not what Baltimore can do for you. Somebody's got to do something for Baltimore. Otherwise, White Marsh and Towson and Westminster and Ellicott City are going to be the next to not benefit from it, because as much as the governor thinks Baltimore's a separate place, it's part of Maryland, and someone better be rolling their sleeves up to make Baltimore better.
Well, that statement is totally true, and there is a lack of understanding from all the surrounding counties and then all the way up to the state.
It's like an enemy state or something,
Baltimore, so goes the state. I mean, if the prime city in your state is suffering, then the state is suffering. You cannot separate the two. So, yeah, I think a strong Baltimore city only makes everyone else better, and I think people are starting to realize that. And it took some pretty significant things to occur for them to say, "Oh my gosh, we can't just ignore it," because the problems then flow out into the county. I mean, it's.
I'm not ignoring it anymore. I think you're keenly aware of that. I'm not going to ignore that the Orioles might be leaving Baltimore in 2.5 years because there's nothing that says that they're staying other than it says Baltimore on the chest. I remember that. My dad had a horseshoe. I have a long memory for that sort of stuff. I also remember stealing the Cleveland Browns and, how pissed off now that they're going to win the Super Bowl, we're going to not hear about that. Bill, I'm going to let you go, man, and get back to getting on roofs and doing the stuff that you do. Cole Roofing's been doing it 100 years. Inspiring me to be more Baltimore positive, and that doesn't mean that I'm going to be Pollyanna either. So
I appreciate you, brother.
I want to make sure the Baltimore positive that we're looking for a positive tomorrow. I'm not here to whitewash what's really going on. So
yes, sir.
Appreciate you, Bill Cole, Cole Roofing, and Gordian Energy. Learn about the Gordian knot. Royal Farms Coffee in my cup. Cole Roofing sponsors our community and charity series, where you hear me talk to people about Maryland Therapeutic Riding out in the BuyAToyota.com Audio Vault or Movable Feast or the National Kidney Foundation or any of the other cool things that we've been doing here, including the Owings Mills Pikesville Community Association and putting together a beautiful taste event last week. So big thanks to Jessica and everybody out there as well. Nasty at WNST.net finds me, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. I have delusions of grandeur. Peter G. Angelos told me that once. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports and Baltimore positive.